The gunshot shattered the silence at exactly 3:47 a.m. Taemin didn't flinch. He'd heard gunfire before, plenty of times, but never this close to his Gangnam penthouse. Never aimed in his direction. The bullet punched through his bedroom window, embedding itself in the wall exactly 3 inches from where his head had been seconds earlier. He'd moved on instinct, muscle memory from self-defense classes he'd taken years ago and never expected to actually use. His heart hammered as he rolled off the bed, pressed himself against the floor, mind racing through impossible scenarios. Corporate espionage, mistaken identity, random violence. Then he heard her voice, cutting through the darkness like a blade. "Stay down, you beautiful idiot. They're not here for you yet, but they will be if you keep making yourself a target." He looked up, and there she was. Nia, the woman he'd met exactly 8 days ago at a charity auction. The woman who'd rejected his advances with a smile that promised danger. The woman who now stood in his bedroom doorway wearing all black tactical gear, holding a gun with the casual ease of someone born to violence, looking every inch like a goddess of war. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" he managed, voice rough with adrenaline and confusion and something else he couldn't name. "Saving your life, apparently. You're welcome, by the way." She moved to the window with fluid grace, staying low, checking angles he didn't understand. "How many times did I tell you to upgrade your security? How many times did I suggest you shouldn't sleep in rooms with exterior-facing windows?" But no, Kang Taemin knows better. Kang Taemin, with his fancy degrees and his billion-dollar real estate empire, thinks he's untouchable. Another shot rang out, this one closer. Nia returned fire through the window, 3 precise shots that sounded like controlled thunder, then grabbed his wrist with surprising strength and hauled him toward the door. "We need to move now. They're coming up." "Who's coming up? Who's shooting at me? What's happening?" His questions tumbled out in a rush as she dragged him down the hallway of his own home, like she owned it, like she'd planned this exact route 100 times. "People who want to hurt me by hurting you. People who notice the way you've been following me around Seoul like a lost puppy for the past week. People who think you mattered to me." She glanced back, eyes meeting his in the darkness. "They're not wrong, unfortunately. That's become a very expensive problem for both of us." They hit the stairs just as his front door exploded inward. Not picked, not bypassed, demolished with what sounded like a battering ram or explosive charge. Footsteps thundered into his home, multiple men, military precision, moving with the coordination of professionals who'd done this before. Nia pressed him against the wall in the stairwell, her body covering his in a way that felt protective and possessive all at once. Her perfume, something exotic with notes of sandalwood and danger, wrapped around him even as his world spiraled into chaos. "Listen very carefully," she whispered against his ear, breath warm on his skin. "When we hit the garage, you're getting in my car. You're not arguing, not asking questions, not doing anything except exactly what I tell you. Understand? I have security. I have people. I should call the police. Your security is already dead. I found 2 bodies on my way in. And the police?" She laughed, bitter and beautiful. "The police can't help you now, sweetheart. You're in my world, and in my world, we handle our own problems." She pulled back just enough to look at him, and he saw genuine concern in her eyes, fear even beneath the tactical mask. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I brought this to your door, but we survive first, apologize later. Deal?" He nodded because what else could he do? His carefully constructed life had just exploded, literally, and the only person offering a way out was a woman he barely knew but couldn't stop thinking about. They moved down the stairs in synchronized silence. Taemin had never been in combat, never trained for anything like this, but somehow he matched her rhythm, her pace, her absolute focus. When they reached the garage, Nia moved to a motorcycle he'd never seen before, matte black Kawasaki Ninja H2, the kind of machine that cost as much as a luxury car and could outrun pretty much anything on Seoul's streets. You know how to hold on? She asked, already mounting the bike with practiced ease. I've never been on a motorcycle in my life. Then you're about to learn very quickly. Get on, arms around my waist. Don't let go no matter what happens. If I tell you to lean, you lean. If I tell you to duck, you duck. Your life depends on following instructions now. He climbed on behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, feeling the lean muscle beneath the tactical gear, the absolute control in every movement she made. The garage door was already opening. She'd triggered it somehow. And then they were launching into the pre-dawn darkness of Seoul at a speed that stole his breath. Behind them, his mansion erupted in flames. Not a metaphor, not hyperbole. Actual flames consuming the home his father had built, the legacy he'd inherited, everything he'd known for 34 years. Taemin watched it burn in the side mirror as they screamed through Gangnam's empty streets at speeds that should have been illegal. Were illegal, actually. But Nia rode like someone who'd never cared about laws or limits or anything except survival. "Who are you, really?" he shouted over the engine's roar and the wind that tore at his clothes. "I told you at the auction. Businesswoman. Businesswomen don't extract people from assassination attempts at 4 in the morning. Successful ones do." She took a corner at an angle that defied physics, and he held on tighter, pressed his face against her back, and wondered how his life had become an action movie in the span of 8 days. 8 days ago, he'd been bored, spectacularly, suffocatingly bored with his perfectly planned existence. CEO of Kang Development Corporation by 28 when his father died suddenly. Built it into one of Seoul's premier luxury real estate firms by 34. Dated actresses and models and socialites who wanted his money or his status or his connections. Attended charity events and business galas and political fundraisers where he played the role of Seoul's golden son with practiced perfection. Then he'd seen her across the auction floor at the National Museum fundraiser. African woman, stunning in a way that made every other person in the room fade to grayscale. She wore gold, fitted dress that moved like liquid metal, hair in intricate braids woven with actual gold thread. Presence so commanding that conversation stopped when she walked past. He'd approached with his usual confidence, his trademark smile, his assumption that charm and wealth could open any door. "I don't believe we've met. Kang Taemin, KDC Development." She'd looked at him with eyes that held galaxies and secrets and amusement at his obvious interest. "I know exactly who you are, Mr. Kang. Your company built the Hanam Tower. Impressive structure, questionable foundation work, but impressive." The insult, delivered with a smile that took the edge off, had intrigued him more than any compliment could have. "And you are?" "Nia Okafor, import and export specialist." "What do you import and export?" "Things people need but can't obtain through traditional channels. Opportunity, mostly. Access. Solutions." Her answer had been deliberately vague, designed to intrigue, and it had worked perfectly. He'd tried to charm her over champagne. She'd deflected every advance with grace and subtle mockery. He'd asked for her number. She'd suggested he wasn't ready for that level of commitment. He'd asked when he'd see her again. She'd smiled and said, "If you're lucky, never." "I'm dangerous for men like you. Pretty men with perfect lives who've never been hurt. I break things, Mr. Kang. Beautiful, expensive things. You should stay far away." Then she'd walked away, leaving him standing there like he'd been struck by lightning, every nerve ending alive for the first time in years. He'd spent the next week trying to find her. Used every connection, every resource, every investigator his company employed. Found nothing except whispers. Nia Okafor existed on paper, legitimate business registration, import, export licenses, even charitable donations that made her look like a model corporate citizen. But beneath that, rumors. Connections to West African diaspora communities throughout Asia. Protection networks for immigrants and refugees. Businesses that seemed too successful, too well connected, too untouchable. And always, always the suggestion of something more, something darker, something that operated in spaces between legal and illegal, where traditional rules didn't apply. He should have listened to her warning, should have walked away. Instead, he'd shown up at her registered business address 3 days ago with coffee and a smile, and a determination to prove he wasn't like other men she'd dismissed. She'd been standing outside the building directing workers unloading shipping containers with the authority of someone used to command. When she saw him, she'd actually laughed. You don't give up easily. I never learned how. It's a character flaw. It's going to get you killed. She'd accepted the coffee anyway, and they'd talked for 2 hours about everything except whatever dangerous business she actually conducted. Art and music and the ways Seoul had changed since she'd arrived 5 years ago. She'd been funny and sharp and fascinating, dropping her guard just enough that he'd seen glimpses of the woman beneath the armor. When he'd asked to see her again, properly this time, dinner at the best restaurant in Gangnam, she'd hesitated in a way that felt significant. You don't know what you're asking for, Taemin. My world isn't safe for civilians. Then teach me to survive it. Let me in. Why? Why risk everything for someone you barely know? Because in 34 years, I've never met anyone who makes me feel like you do. Alive. Awake. Like I've been sleepwalking through my entire life. And you're the first real thing I've encountered. She'd touched his face then, gentle and sad and full of regret. That's exactly why I should say no. That's exactly why this is dangerous. But she'd said yes anyway, given him her number, agreed to dinner the following week, looked at him with something that might have been hope or fear or both. And then, tonight, his world had exploded. Literally exploded, because someone had decided he mattered enough to eliminate. They rode for 30 minutes at speeds that should have killed them, weaving through traffic that didn't exist yet, taking routes that seemed random but clearly weren't. Nia knew exactly where she was going, exactly how to lose anyone who might be following, exactly how to disappear in a city of 10 million people. Finally, she pulled into an underground parking structure in Itaewon, one of the older buildings that catered to foreign residents and diplomatic staff. She killed the engine in a corner space that put them near 3 different exits, tactical thinking even here. When Taemin climbed off the bike, his legs were shaking. Adrenaline crash hitting hard, reality finally catching up to the nightmare his life had become. Are you hurt? Nia was suddenly there, hands running over him with clinical efficiency, checking for injuries he didn't even know to look for. Did you get hit? Any pain? Anywhere? Just my pride, and my sense of reality, and my understanding of how the universe works. He caught her hands, held them still. My house is gone. My security team is dead. Someone just tried to kill me, and the only reason I'm alive is because you broke into my home and extracted me like some kind of special forces operator. So, I'll ask again, who the hell are you, really? Nia looked at him for a long moment, conflict playing across her features in the parking garage's fluorescent lighting. Then she sighed, pulled her hands free and said, "Let's get inside first. I'll tell you everything, and then you can decide if you want to walk away while you still can." She led him to an elevator that required a keycard, took them to the 8th floor, led him down a hallway to an apartment that looked completely normal from the outside. Modest door, standard lock, nothing to indicate it was anything except another foreign resident's home. Inside was different. The apartment was a safe house, obviously. Minimal furniture, multiple computers set up on tables, surveillance equipment, weapons mounted on walls with casual accessibility, maps of Seoul marked with locations and routes and things he didn't understand, and women. 4 of them, all African, all wearing the same tactical gear Nia had on, all armed, all looking at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern to outright hostility. "Everyone, this is Kang Taemin. Taemin, this is my actual team, my actual life. Welcome to the truth you've been so desperate to discover." Nia gestured around the room. I run a protection network for West African immigrants and refugees throughout East Asia. I move money, products, and people across borders when traditional systems fail them. I provide security for communities that law enforcement ignores or actively oppresses. I solve problems that have no legal solutions, and I do it so well that very dangerous people pay enormous sums to ensure I'm working for them instead of against them. You're a crime boss, Taemin's voice came out flat, stating fact, not judging. I prefer community organizer with expanded tactical capabilities, but yes, essentially. She moved to one of the computers, pulled up files, showed him shipping manifests and financial records and documentation of operations that were clearly illegal but somehow seemed necessary. 5 years ago, I came to Seoul with nothing, absolutely nothing. I was running from a situation in Lagos that would have killed me if I'd stayed. I found a community of people like me, desperate and scared and trying to survive in a country that didn't want us, couldn't see us, wouldn't protect us. So I built something that could. She turned to face him fully, arms crossed, defensive but honest. I built networks, created businesses that were half legitimate, half shadow economy, protected people who couldn't protect themselves, made myself valuable enough, dangerous enough, untouchable enough that I could operate freely. And it worked. For 5 years, it worked perfectly. Until me. The words came out bitter. Until you. Until I made the catastrophically stupid decision to let someone close, to go to that auction, to talk to you, to hope that maybe I could have something normal for once in my goddamn life. Her voice cracked, genuine emotion breaking through the tactical mask. I have enemies, Taemin. People who want to take over my networks, absorb my operations, eliminate my competition. And the moment they saw us together, the moment they realized you might matter to me, you became a target. A vulnerability they could exploit. A way to hurt me by destroying you. One of the women, tall with Kenyan features and a scar across her left cheek, spoke up in accented English. Boss, the hit was contracted by the Zhao family, Chinese syndicate out of Busan. They've been trying to move into Seoul's immigrant protection market for 6 months. They see you as the primary obstacle. How many shooters did they send? Nia's voice shifted, became all business, the woman replaced by the operator. 4 confirmed. 2 of Taemin's security team are dead. The other 2 are in protective custody at our Yongdeungpo location. They're traumatized but alive. The shooters escaped in the chaos. Find them. I want locations by sunrise. And get word to Zhao. He just declared war, and wars have consequences. The woman nodded and moved to a computer, fingers flying across keys with practiced speed. Nia turned back to Taemin, and her expression softened again. I'm sorry. I'm so profoundly sorry. This is my fault. I should have stayed away, should have listened to my own rules about never getting close, never caring, never letting anyone matter. But I liked you. I liked the way you looked at me like I was magic instead of dangerous. I liked that you didn't know my reputation, didn't fear me, just saw me as a woman worth pursuing. She moved closer, and he could see tears threatening in her eyes. I can get you out. New identity. New country. Enough money to start over somewhere the Zhao family will never find you. South America, maybe, or Europe. Somewhere safe. Somewhere far from this mess I've created. You can walk away right now, tonight, and I'll make sure you're protected forever. All you have to do is say yes. Taemin looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd saved his life, who ran a criminal empire with apparent ease, who was offering him escape and safety and everything logical he should accept. And he thought about the past 8 days, the way she'd made him laugh, the way she'd challenged every assumption he'd ever made about himself. The way she'd looked at him with hope and fear and the desperate loneliness of someone who'd been alone too long at the top. He thought about his boring, perfect, suffocating life, the endless board meetings and charity events and meaningless relationships with women who wanted his status but never really saw him. The empire his father built that felt more like a prison than a legacy. The sleepwalking existence he'd been trapped in until she'd walked into that auction and destroyed everything with one smile. "No," he said simply. Nia blinked. "No. Taemin, they tried to kill you tonight. They burned your house down. This isn't a game. This is your life." "I know exactly what this is. And I'm saying no, I'm not running. I'm not walking away. I'm not letting you face this alone because you were kind enough to give me attention." He stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her brown eyes, close enough to feel her breath catch. "You said I don't know what I'm asking for. You're right, I don't. But I'm asking anyway. Teach me your world. Let me stand beside you. Whatever this is, whatever's coming, we face it together." "You're insane. Completely, certifiably insane. Probably, but I'd rather be insane with you than safe and alone." He reached up, tucked a loose braid behind her ear with a gentleness that felt revolutionary in this room full of weapons and danger. "I've spent my entire life being safe, Nia. Playing by rules I mastered so long ago, they stopped meaning anything. You make me feel alive, real, like I matter beyond my bank account or my family name. Don't take that away by trying to protect me from the very thing that makes you who you are." The room had gone absolutely silent. Her team watching this exchange with expressions ranging from shock to approval to concern. Nia stared at him like he'd just declared something impossible, something dangerous, something that changed every calculation she'd ever made. "If you stay, if you choose this, there's no going back," she whispered. "The moment you commit, you're in my world permanently. The Zhao family won't stop. Others will come. Your reputation, your company, your perfect life, all of it will be at risk. You'll become a target every single day for as long as we're together." "Then make me hard to hit." His voice came out steady, certain, more confident than he'd felt about anything in years. "Teach me to survive. Teach me to fight. Teach me your world so I can stand beside you in it instead of being a liability you have to protect." Nia's breath hitched. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Her hands came up to cup his face, trembling slightly, the first time he'd seen her anything less than completely controlled. "You're going to ruin me," she said softly. "You're going to make me hope for things I can't afford to want. You're going to break my heart. Or we'll build something beautiful together, something neither of us knew was possible." He leaned forward, pressed his forehead to hers, intimate and fierce. "Take a chance on me, Nia. Let me in. Let me prove I'm worth the risk." For a long moment she was perfectly still. Then she kissed him. It wasn't gentle or careful or anything except desperate and demanding and full of 5 years of loneliness finally finding release. Her hands tangled in his hair, his arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her close, and somewhere in the background, her team had the grace to look away and give them this moment. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Nia was smiling, really smiling, unguarded and beautiful and devastating. "Okay," she said. "Okay, you insane, beautiful man. You want in? You're in. Welcome to my world, Kang Taemin. Try not to die. I'll do my absolute best." She laughed, kissed him again quickly, then pulled back and her tactical mask slammed back into place. "All right, everyone listen up. Taemin is under our protection now. Full protection, same level as primary assets. He needs training, weapons proficiency, tactical awareness, everything. We have maybe 48 hours before the Zhao family regroups and comes harder. Let's use that time wisely." The woman with the scar spoke up. "Boss, his company. KDC Development. It's vulnerable now. Board members, investors, they're going to panic when news breaks about the mansion fire. Corporate sharks will circle. We need to secure his professional position or he loses everything that makes him valuable as a legitimate partner." Nia nodded, mind clearly racing through scenarios and solutions. "He's right. We need a strategy. Taemin, How loyal is your board? Mixed. Some are my father's old guard, completely loyal. Others are investors who only care about profit margins. If they smell weakness, they'll move against me. Then we don't let them smell weakness. Tomorrow morning, you call an emergency board meeting. You explain the fire was a targeted attack by competitors trying to intimidate you before a major deal. You're taking temporary security precautions but remaining fully operational. We make this look like corporate warfare, not personal vulnerability. What major deal? The one you're about to announce with my import-on-export company. Legitimate partnership, real contracts, actual revenue streams. We make your association with me look like brilliant business strategy instead of romantic liability. She was already moving to a computer, pulling up files, drafting contracts with a speed that suggested she'd planned this possibility long before tonight. We legitimize parts of my operation through your company, give me access to your legal teams and political connections, give you access to my international networks and shipping capabilities. We become publicly, professionally intertwined so completely that attacking one of us becomes attacking both. Mutually assured destruction for anyone stupid enough to try. Taemin watched her work, this woman who was simultaneously saving his life and offering him a criminal partnership disguised as legitimate business, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Direction. The electric thrill of being exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do, even if every logical brain cell screamed that this was insane. "When do we start?" he asked. Nia looked up from the computer, eyes bright with approval, and something that might have been love, or might have been respect, or might have been both. "Right now. Welcome to the Empire, Mr. Kang. Let's build something that can't be destroyed." The emergency board meeting happened at 7 a.m., exactly 3 hours after Taemin had escaped his burning mansion. He walked into the KDC Development Conference Room, wearing a borrowed suit from his emergency office wardrobe, looking every inch the composed CEO, despite having not slept, despite the smell of smoke still clinging to his skin, despite the fact that his entire world had been turned inside out in a single night. The board members were already assembled, 12 of them looking various degrees of concerned, angry, and calculating. Director Huang, his father's oldest friend and most loyal supporter, stood immediately. "Taemin, thank God. We heard about the fire. Are you hurt? What happened?" "Targeted arson, we believe. Corporate sabotage related to our expansion into international shipping partnerships. I'm fine. The house is not. But property can be replaced." He kept his voice steady, authoritative, the tone he'd perfected over 6 years of running this company. "I've called this emergency meeting to address concerns and to announce a strategic partnership that will not only secure our position, but expand our capabilities significantly." Director Park, younger, ambitious, always looking for weakness to exploit, leaned forward. "Corporate sabotage? That's a serious accusation. Have you contacted the police? What evidence do you have? And what partnership are you talking about?" "I'm working with private security and investigators. The police have been notified, but this kind of corporate warfare requires discreet handling. As for the partnership..." He pulled up the presentation Nia had prepared in 2 hours, professionally formatted, financially sound, strategically brilliant. "KDC Development will be entering a joint venture with Okafor International Import-Export. We're combining resources for luxury goods importation, African art and textile markets, and expanding our development projects to include cultural centres serving Seoul's growing international communities." The presentation was masterful. Nia had created detailed financial projections, market analysis, demographic studies, everything needed to make this look like the business opportunity of the decade rather than a crime boss legitimizing her operations through his company. Director Huang studied the numbers, nodding slowly. "The projections are impressive. Who is Okafor International? I'm not familiar with this company." They've operated primarily in West African markets for the past 5 years. Excellent reputation, strong international connections, untapped potential for Asian expansion. I've been negotiating this partnership for several weeks. Last night's attack actually confirms we're making the right move. Someone wants to prevent this alliance, which means they recognize its value and threat potential. It wasn't entirely a lie. The Zhao family definitely wanted to prevent this alliance, just not for the business reasons he was suggesting. Director Park wasn't convinced. This seems rushed. Convenient timing, right after your home is destroyed. Are you sure you're thinking clearly? Maybe we should postpone major decisions until things stabilize. Postponing is exactly what our competitors want. They attacked my home hoping to destabilize me, make me hesitate, make the board doubt my leadership. I refuse to give them that satisfaction. Taemin met each board member's eyes, projecting confidence he didn't entirely feel, but had perfected over years of bluffing through difficult negotiations. This partnership moves forward today. I have controlling shares, but I'm presenting this out of respect for this board and my father's legacy. The question is whether you trust my judgment or whether you'd prefer I make these decisions without your input moving forward. The implied threat hung in the air. He could do this with or without their approval, and they all knew it. After tense discussion, arguments about due diligence and risk assessment, and proper vetting procedures, the board approved the partnership. Narrow majority, but enough. Director Huang pulled him aside afterward, concern evident. Your father would be proud of your composure, but he'd also tell you to be careful. Corporate warfare is one thing, but if you're involving yourself with anything questionable, anything that could damage this company's reputation, I know what I'm doing, Director Huang. Trust me. I do trust you. That's what worries me. You're brilliant at business, but you're also impulsive when you think you found something worth fighting for. Just promise me you're not risking everything we've built on something that isn't worth the cost. Taemin thought about Nia's kiss, her desperate admission of loneliness, the way she'd saved his life without hesitation. It's worth it. I promise you, it's worth everything. He left the building to find Nia waiting in her car, a sleek black Mercedes S-Class with tinted windows and diplomatic plates she'd obtained through connections he probably didn't want to know about. She'd changed from tactical gear into elegant business attire, deep burgundy suit that made her look like exactly what she was claiming to be, successful international businesswoman. How'd it go? She asked as he slid into the passenger seat. Approved. Narrow margin, but approved. We're officially partners now. Good, because while you were charming your board, I was handling our other problem. Her expression darkened. The Zhao family sent a message. They know you're under my protection now. They're not backing down. In fact, they're escalating. What kind of escalation? They've put a bounty on both of us. $2 million for information leading to our location. $5 million for successful elimination. They've activated every contractor, every desperate criminal, every person in Seoul who might be tempted by that kind of money. The casual way she delivered this information, like discussing weather or traffic, sent ice through Taemin's veins. We have a price on our heads. Welcome to my world, sweetheart. This is Tuesday for me. She pulled into traffic with practiced ease, heading somewhere he didn't recognize. But yes, this is more aggressive than usual. The Zhao family is making an example, trying to prove they can't be challenged, can't be embarrassed. We humiliated them by surviving their first attack. Now they're going scorched earth. So what do? We respond with equivalent force. We show them that attacking us costs more than tolerating us. We make them regret escalation. She glanced at him, assessing. But first, we make you less of a liability. You can't defend yourself, can't recognize threats, can't operate in situations where violence is inevitable. That changes starting today. They arrived at what looked like an abandoned warehouse in Guro District industrial area that Seoul's economic miracle had largely forgotten. Inside was nothing like the exterior suggested. The warehouse had been converted into a training facility that would make military special forces jealous. Shooting ranges, hand-to-hand combat areas, obstacle courses, surveillance equipment, everything needed to turn civilians into operators. Nia's team was already there, 8 women total now, all looking at Taemin with varying degrees of skepticism. The woman with the scar, who he'd learned was named Amara and served as Nia's second-in-command, approached with a handgun. "Ever fired one of these?" she asked, thick Kenyan accent making the question sound almost friendly, despite the challenge in her eyes. "Twice. At a corporate team-building event. I hit the target once." "Fantastic. So you're completely useless in a firefight. We'll fix that." For the next 6 hours, they put him through hell. Weapons training that left his hands shaking and his ears ringing despite protection. Hand-to-hand combat instruction that left him bruised and humiliated every time one of Nia's operators casually threw him to the mat. Situational awareness drills that proved he'd been walking through Seoul completely blind to potential threats his entire life. He was terrible at all of it. Absolutely, spectacularly terrible. But he didn't quit. Every time he hit the ground, he got back up. Every time he missed the target, he adjusted his stance and tried again. Every time exhaustion made him want to surrender, he thought about the bullet that had missed his head by 3 inches and found new reserves of determination. Nia watched from the sidelines, occasionally offering corrections, mostly letting her team break him down and rebuild him. When they finally called a break after 6 brutal hours, Taemin collapsed against a wall, every muscle screaming, dignity thoroughly destroyed. She sat beside him, offered water, studied him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You're stubborn. That's good. Stubbornness keeps you alive when skill fails." "I'm terrible at this. At all of this. I'm a CEO who's good with spreadsheets and zoning regulations. I don't know how to be what you need me to be." "You don't need to be me. You need to be functional enough to survive while I handle actual threats. 6 months of this training and you'll be adequate. That's all I'm asking for." "Adequate." She touched his face, gentle despite the violence they'd been practicing all morning. "You're doing better than you think. Most civilians fold in the first hour. You lasted 6 and kept trying even when it was obvious you were outmatched. That's courage, Taemin. Different kind than I'm used to, but courage nonetheless. I don't feel courageous. I feel like I'm drowning and desperately hoping I figure out how to swim before I run out of air. That's exactly what courage is. Drowning, but swimming anyway." She kissed him, soft and quick, then stood. "Come on, we're not done. You need to learn surveillance detection, counter-surveillance techniques, and basic tactical thinking. If they come for us again, and they will, you need to be able to recognize the threat before it's too late." The training continued into the evening. Taemin learned to spot tails, identify concealed weapons, recognize pre-attack behaviors, assess exit routes from any room he entered. His brain hurt almost as much as his body, processing information and tactics that felt completely foreign to everything he'd known. When darkness fell, Nia called the training session complete. They returned to the safe house in Itaewon, where her team was analyzing intelligence on the Zhao family operations, tracking movements, building target packages for responses Taemin was only beginning to understand. He showered, washing away sweat and the physical evidence of his complete inadequacy, then found Nia on the apartment's small balcony, staring at Seoul's nighttime skyline with expression that looked almost melancholy. "Regret letting me stay yet?" he asked, joining her in the cool night air. "Every 5 minutes then I look at you and remember why I made this terrible decision." She didn't turn, kept watching the city like it held answers she desperately needed. "I've been alone for so long, Taemin. 5 years of building this empire, protecting these people, operating in shadows where trust is a weakness and connection is a vulnerability. I forgot what it felt like to have someone beside me who wasn't there because I paid them or because they feared me. Someone who chose this, chose me, knowing full well how dangerous it would be. I chose you before I knew the danger. Would that have changed your answer? Probably. Which is why I'm glad you're beautiful and persistent and too stubborn to listen to warnings. She finally turned, leaned against the balcony railing, studied him with those eyes that always seemed to see too much. The board approved the partnership. The training is underway. We have plans to counter the Zhao family's escalation. Everything is proceeding according to strategy. But there's something else we need to discuss. Something I've been avoiding because once I say it, it becomes real in ways neither of us can take back. Tell me, I'm falling in love with you. The words came out stark, honest, terrifying in their simplicity. I know it's too soon. I know it's dangerous. I know it makes both of us more vulnerable than we can afford to be. But it's happening anyway, and I need you to know before things get worse. Before the violence escalates. Before we're too deep to surface. I'm falling in love with you. And it's the most frightening thing I've felt in 5 years because love is the one thing I can't control, can't strategize around, can't protect us from. Taemin's heart slammed against his ribs. The words he'd been feeling but hadn't dared speak, handed to him like a gift and a grenade simultaneously. I love you too. Completely, impossibly, probably insanely, but I love you. He moved closer, closed the distance between them until they were breathing the same air. I've loved you since that first conversation at the auction where you insulted my foundation work and made me laugh. I've loved you through every warning, every danger sign, every logical reason to walk away. I love the way you command rooms. I love the way you protect your people. I love that you're brilliant and deadly and somehow soft with me in ways you're not with anyone else. I love you, Nia. And I know that's a weapon someone could use against us, but I'm saying it anyway because you deserve to hear it. She kissed him like she was drowning and he was oxygen. Desperate and demanding and full of 5 years of loneliness, finally finding release. His hands tangled in her braids, her body pressed against his, and for a moment, the danger, the violence, the impossible situation they were in, all of it faded against the simple truth that they'd found each other in the chaos. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Nia was smiling through tears. We're going to die, you know. Loving each other like this, being this vulnerable, it's going to get us killed eventually. Then we make it worth dying for. We build something beautiful in whatever time we have. You're a romantic. I didn't account for that. You're a crime boss who saves refugees and protects communities the system ignores. I didn't account for that either. We're both full of surprises. They stood on that balcony watching Seoul's lights until Amara interrupted with urgent news. Boss, we have a problem. The Zhao family just made a move. They hit one of our safe houses in Yongdyungpo. 3 of our people are dead, 2 wounded. They left a message. Nia's entire demeanor shifted instantly. Softness replaced by cold, tactical thinking. The woman replaced by the operator. What message? They took one of our supply shipments. Medical supplies, food, resources we were distributing to immigrant communities tomorrow. They're holding it hostage. Either you meet with them to negotiate territory, or they start eliminating the people we're supposed to protect. 1 person every 6 hours until you comply. The air seemed to crystallize. Taemin watched Nia's jaw clench, watched her hands curl into fists, watched fury and helplessness war across her features. They're using civilians as leverage, using the people I protect to force my hand. It's a trap, Amara said flatly. Obviously a trap. They want you to walk into a meeting where they control the environment, control the variables, where they can eliminate both of you simultaneously. We can't negotiate on their terms. We can't let them murder innocent people every 6 hours either. These are families, children, people who trust me to keep them safe. If I don't respond, if I let them die to protect myself, what kind of monster does that make me? Nia was pacing now, predator in a cage, mind racing through impossible scenarios. Taemin spoke up before he could reconsider. What if you don't go alone? What if you bring leverage they can't ignore? What leverage? I don't have... She stopped, looked at him, understanding and horror dawning simultaneously. No, absolutely not. Whatever you're thinking, no. I'm thinking they want to hurt you by eliminating me. That's suicide. You're suggesting we hand you to them. I'm suggesting we make them think they're getting what they want while actually walking into an ambush. You said yourself I need to learn tactical thinking. This is tactical thinking. Amara was nodding slowly despite herself. It's insane, but it could work. They're expecting you to come defensive, protected, ready for a fight. If instead you show up cooperative, bringing Taemin as a peace offering, it changes their calculations. Makes them confident. Overconfident, maybe. He has zero training, zero experience, zero ability to defend himself if this goes wrong. I'm not risking him like that. You're risking those families if you don't respond. You're risking your entire network's trust if they see you prioritize one man's safety over dozens of innocents. Taemin kept his voice steady despite his heart trying to escape his chest. You said you're falling in love with me. Prove it. Trust me to stand beside you even when it's dangerous, especially when it's dangerous. Nia stared at him for a long moment, conflict written across every feature. Then she turned to Amara. Set it up. Tell the Zhao family I'll meet them tomorrow evening at a location of their choosing. Tell them I'm bringing Taemin as a gesture of good faith, proof that I'm willing to negotiate seriously, and then prepare our team for extraction operations. Because we're not negotiating anything. We're going in, getting our supplies back, and making sure the Zhao family understands what happens when you threaten my people. Boss, Amara started, but Nia cut her off. I'm not letting anyone die. Not the families they're threatening and not him. We go in smart, we go in prepared, and we come out alive. All of us. No exceptions. She looked at Taemin, eyes blazing with determination and fear and love mixed together. You want to stand beside me? Tomorrow you'll get your chance. Try not to get yourself killed. I'd really hate to have to avenge you. I'll do my absolute best. The next 18 hours were a blur of preparation that felt surreal. Nia's team outfitted Taemin with concealed body armor, lightweight but effective, worn under an expensive suit that made him look like the wealthy CEO rather than a man walking into a potential execution. They gave him a panic button disguised as a watch, communication device hidden in a collar stay, tracking beacons in his shoes. Every precaution available for someone who couldn't actually fight his way out of trouble. They rehearsed scenarios, practiced responses, went over signals and extraction protocols until his brain felt like it might melt. Nia drilled him personally on what to do if shooting started. Drop flat, cover his head, stay down no matter what he heard or saw, let the professionals handle violence. You're not a hero, she said firmly during one rehearsal. You're bait that I'm praying doesn't get bitten. Your only job is to survive long enough for us to complete the operation. Can you do that? I can do that. Promise me. Promise me if things go bad, you won't try anything heroic or stupid. You'll focus solely on staying alive. I promise. She kissed him then, desperate and demanding like she was trying to memorize the taste of him just in case. If you die tomorrow, I'll find a way to bring you back just so I can kill you myself for making me care this much. Noted. I'll add that to my list of motivations for survival. The meeting was set for an abandoned factory in Bucheon, industrial area, west of Seoul, where violence could happen without witnesses. The Zhao family chose the location specifically for that isolation, that lack of accountability. Nia's team scouted the area for hours beforehand, identifying positions, planning approach routes, setting up their own ambush within the Zhao family's intended trap. When evening came, Taemin rode with Nia in her Mercedes, following the route the Zhao family had specified, driving straight into what everyone knew was a carefully designed kill zone. She gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles, jaw clenched, every line of her body radiating tension. Last chance to back out. I can turn around right now, find another way to handle this. Keep driving. We've committed. Time to see if we're as smart as we think we are. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. It's part of my charm. She laughed despite herself, some of the tension breaking. How are you so calm? I'm not. I'm terrified. But I'm also weirdly excited. Is that normal? Should I be worried about my mental health? You're falling in love with a crime boss and using yourself as bait to save refugees you've never met. Your mental health is definitely questionable. They pulled up to the factory at exactly the specified time. 7 p.m., light fading but not gone. That twilight hour where shadows could hide anything. The Zhao family had 3 vehicles waiting, expensive SUVs arranged in a semicircle that created a natural trap. At least a dozen men visible, probably more hidden, all armed, all professional. This was a show of force, a demonstration of power, a message about what happened to people who challenged the Zhao family's expansion. A man stepped forward from the center vehicle, Zhao Minjun himself, head of the family's Korean operations, 50-something with expensive suit and eyes like a shark, cold and calculating and completely devoid of mercy. Miss Okafor, how good of you to accept our invitation. He spoke English with British accented perfection, educated abroad, returned to run criminal operations with MBA efficiency. Mr. Zhao, you have something that belongs to me. I'd like it back. Of course, after we discussed terms of your departure from Seoul, you've been operating in our territory without proper authorization, without paying appropriate tributes, without acknowledging the established hierarchy. That ends tonight. Nia exited the vehicle with calm grace, and Taemin followed, trying to project the same confidence while his heart tried to hammer through his ribs. Every operator on Nia's team was watching from concealed positions. He knew that intellectually, but standing in this factory yard surrounded by armed men made that knowledge feel theoretical rather than comforting. Your territory? Nia's voice was ice. I've been operating in Seoul for 5 years. Your family only entered this market 8 months ago. If anyone is encroaching, Mr. Zhao, it's you. Details. The relevant fact is that we have superior force, superior connections, and superior incentive to remove obstacles. You've become an obstacle, Miss Okafor. A rather expensive one. Zhao's eyes shifted to Taemin, predatory assessment. And you brought your weakness with you. How convenient. Mr. Kang, we've heard much about your new partnership with Miss Okafor. Quite the dramatic shift for Seoul's golden boy. How does it feel to trade your perfect reputation for association with a criminal? Better than spending another day sleepwalking through the life I was supposed to want. At least this is real. Real. How philosophical. Will that philosophy comfort you when reality involves bullets? This was the moment, the pivot point where everything would either work or catastrophically fail. Taemin stepped forward slightly, drawing focus, becoming the obvious target. You said you wanted a meeting to negotiate. We're here, we're talking. What exactly do you want? Territory? Money? Market share? Put numbers on it. Let's discuss this like businessmen instead of waving guns around like we're in a bad action movie. Zhao laughed, and it was an ugly sound. You have courage, I'll grant you that. Stupid courage, but courage nonetheless. Unfortunately, this isn't a negotiation, Mr. Kang. This is a demonstration. Miss Okafor needs to understand consequences, needs to see what happens when... The first shot came from somewhere in the darkness, taking down one of Zhao's guards before anyone could react. Then chaos. Nia's team had been positioned perfectly, waiting for the exact moment when Zhao revealed his true intentions, when he admitted this was execution rather than negotiation. They opened up from 3 directions simultaneously, controlled fire that targeted specific threats, created confusion and chaos, transformed Zhao's carefully arranged trap into a nightmare. Taemin dropped flat, exactly as trained, arms over his head, making himself the smallest possible target. Bullets whined overhead, impacting concrete and metal around him. He could hear Nia shouting orders in multiple languages, coordinating her team with precision that would make military commanders jealous. Then hands grabbed him, hauled him up. For one terrifying moment he thought Zhao's men had him, but it was Amara, appearing from nowhere with rifle and tactical gear and expression of grim determination. "Move! Now!" She practically dragged him toward cover, bullets tracking their movement, concrete exploding in chips where shots missed. They dove behind a concrete barrier and Amara immediately returned fire. 3 precise shots that dropped 2 of Zhao's operators, who'd been flanking their position. "Where's Nia?" Taemin shouted over the gunfire. "Doing what she does best, making people regret threatening her." The firefight lasted maybe 90 seconds that felt like 90 hours. Zhao's men were professional, but Nia's team was better, more coordinated, fighting for something beyond money or territory. Fighting for family, for community, for the refugees and immigrants who depended on them for protection. When silence finally fell, 5 of Zhao's men were down, the rest surrendering or fleeing into the darkness. Zhao himself was on his knees with Nia standing over him, gun pressed to his skull, looking every inch the dangerous operator her reputation claimed. "You made 3 critical errors tonight, Mr. Zhao," she said, voice carrying across the factory yard with cold precision. "First, you assumed I'd negotiate from weakness. Second, you threatened innocent people to force my hand. Third, you underestimated how far I'd go to protect what's mine." She pressed the gun harder. "Your supply shipments are now mine. Your operations in Seoul are finished. You have 24 hours to leave this city and never return. If I see any member of the Zhao family operating in Seoul after that deadline, I won't be this merciful. Am I clear?" Zhao nodded jerkily, fear finally breaking through his calculated exterior. "Crystal clear." "Good. Now get out of my sight before I change my mind." She stepped back and Zhao scrambled to his feet, retreating to his vehicle with whatever remained of his dignity and his operation. Within minutes, the factory yard was empty except for Nia's team, securing the scene, checking casualties, collecting intelligence. Nia found Taemin immediately, hands running over him, checking for injuries with clinical efficiency that couldn't quite hide the terror in her eyes. "Are you hurt? Did anything hit you? Talk to me." "I'm fine. Bruised ego from hitting the ground so hard, but fine. We survived. We survived." She pulled him into a kiss that tasted like gunpowder and adrenaline and relief and love. "Don't ever make me do that again. Don't ever make me use you as bait. My heart can't take it. You saved those families. You protected your people. You handled it perfectly. I nearly got you killed. That's not." 3 months passed like a fever dream of transformation. Taemin watched Nia systematically dismantle and rebuild her entire operation, shifting from shadow empire to legitimate corporate structure with the same ruthless efficiency she'd applied to everything else. The partnership between KDC Development and Okafor International expanded rapidly, almost frighteningly so. What started as import-export agreements evolved into comprehensive community development projects, cultural centers for African immigrants, language schools, legal aid services, business incubators for refugee entrepreneurs. Everything Nia had been doing illegally, they were now doing through proper channels with proper funding and proper government approval. The transformation was brilliant and strategic and terrifying in its scope. Seoul's business community didn't know what hit them. Nia moved through corporate meetings and government negotiations with the same commanding presence she'd brought to criminal operations, except now she wore designer business suits instead of tactical gear, negotiated contracts instead of territory, commanded boardrooms instead of strike teams. She was magnificent, absolutely devastatingly magnificent. Taemin found himself falling deeper in love every single day, watching her navigate his world with the same competence she'd shown in hers. But not everyone was celebrating their success. Director Park had been growing increasingly hostile during board meetings, questioning every decision, challenging every expense related to the Okafor partnership, making barely veiled accusations about improper conduct and questionable associations. "He's going to be a problem," Nia observed one evening, reviewing financial reports in their new shared penthouse in Hanam-dong. They'd moved in together 2 months ago, combining households, combining lives, making their relationship as public as their business partnership. "He's been a problem since my father died. Park wanted control of KDC, thought he'd earned it through years of service. When I inherited instead, he never forgave me for being born into what he believed he deserved. He's gathering allies. I've been tracking his meetings, his communications. He's building a coalition to challenge your leadership, probably planning a vote of no confidence within the next quarter." Taemin looked up from his laptop, impressed despite himself. "You've been spying on my board members? I've been protecting our interests. There's a difference," she smiled, unrepentant. "Old habits from my previous career. Just because I'm legitimate now doesn't mean I've forgotten how to gather intelligence." "You're terrifying. I mean that as a compliment." "I know you do. It's one of your more endearing qualities." She set aside her reports, moved to where he sat, settled herself on his lap with casual intimacy that still made his heart race. "But Park is a real threat. If he succeeds in removing you as CEO, everything we've built falls apart. The partnership, the community projects, the legitimacy I've been establishing. All of it depends on your position. Then we make sure he doesn't succeed. We play the game better than he does. I love when you talk strategy. It's very attractive." She kissed him, slow and deep, and for a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them, the taste of her lips, the warmth of her body against his, the simple perfection of being together. Then Taemin's phone shattered the moment with urgent vibration. Director Hwang's name flashed across the screen, calling at nearly midnight, which meant emergency. "Hwang, what's wrong?" "Taemin, I'm sorry to call so late, but you need to know immediately. Park filed a formal complaint with the board. He's alleging financial impropriety, misuse of company resources, and inappropriate mixing of personal and professional relationships. He's demanding an emergency audit of all transactions related to the Okafor partnership and calling for your immediate suspension pending investigation." Ice flooded Taemin's veins. Nia was already on her feet, reading his expression, understanding instantly that something had gone very wrong. "When?" "The complaint was filed an hour ago. Emergency board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Park has support, Taemin. At least 5 board members are backing him. This is serious. This could actually succeed." "It won't. I'll handle it. Thank you for the warning, Director Hwang." He ended the call and looked at Nia, who was already pacing, mind clearly racing through scenarios and solutions. "Park made his move," Taemin said simply. "Financial impropriety allegations, emergency audit, suspension pending investigation. He's going for the throat." "Then we cut his throat first." Her voice was cold, tactical, the operator emerging beneath the businesswoman exterior. "I have information on Park. Things I've discovered during my intelligence gathering. Financial connections to the Zhao family remnants, bribes he's accepted from competitors, embezzlement from KDC that he's managed to hide for years. We expose him before he can damage you. That's blackmail. That's exactly the kind of thing that proves his allegations about inappropriate conduct. That's survival. That's protecting what we've built." She stopped pacing, faced him directly. "I won't let him destroy you, Taemin. I won't let anyone threaten what we've created. If that means playing dirty, if that means using tactics from my old life, then that's what I'll do." "No." The word came out harder than he intended. "No. We don't do this his way. We don't prove his accusations by actually engaging in the conduct he's alleging. We respond with transparency, with documentation, with evidence that every single transaction was legitimate and appropriate and above board." "That's naive. That's hoping the system works when systems are designed to protect people like Park and destroy people like us. Maybe. But it's the only way forward that doesn't turn us into what he's claiming we are. Taemin moved to her, took her hands, forced her to look at him. You've spent 3 months building legitimacy, establishing yourself as a serious businesswoman, creating something sustainable. Don't throw that away by reverting to shadow tactics the moment things get difficult. We fight this the right way, with evidence and documentation and transparency. We prove we have nothing to hide. Nia stared at him, conflict written across every feature. And if we lose, if the board sides with Park despite evidence, despite truth, what then? Then we lose. But we lose with integrity intact. We lose knowing we didn't compromise who we're trying to become. She pulled away, resumed pacing, agitated in ways he rarely saw. You don't understand. In my world, in the world I came from, integrity gets you killed. Mercy gets exploited. Playing by rules while your enemies don't means you lose everything. I've survived 5 years by being smarter, faster, more ruthless than people who wanted to destroy me, and now you're asking me to just trust that being honest will protect us. I'm asking you to trust me. Trust that there's another way. Trust that we can win without becoming what we're fighting against. He crossed to her, cupped her face in his hands, made her meet his eyes. I love you. I love every part of you, including the dangerous operator who's kept you alive. But I also love the woman you're becoming, the legitimate businesswoman who's building something that helps people through legal means. Don't lose that. Don't let Park's accusations force you backward into tactics you've been trying to leave behind. Tears spilled down her cheeks, genuine vulnerability breaking through tactical armor. I'm terrified. I'm absolutely terrified of losing you, losing this, losing everything we've built. The old way, the violent way, at least I knew how to win. This new way, playing by rules, trusting systems, I don't know if it works. I don't know if we can survive it. Then we find out together. Win or lose, we do this the right way. Together. She kissed him desperately, clinging to him like he was the only solid thing in a world turning liquid and unstable. Okay. Okay, we do it your way. We fight with evidence and transparency and hope that's enough. But if it's not, if they try to destroy you anyway, then we'll figure out next steps, but we cross that bridge if we come to it, not before. They spent the rest of the night preparing, gathering documentation, organizing financial records, building a comprehensive defense that proved every transaction was legitimate, every expense justified, every decision made in the company's best interest. When dawn broke over Seoul's skyline, they had something approaching bulletproof documentation of propriety. The emergency board meeting was exactly as hostile as expected. Park had done his homework, gathered his allies, prepared accusations that sounded damning even when stripped of context. He presented his case with practiced outrage, moral indignation, concern for company welfare that would have been convincing if Taemin didn't know the truth behind the performance. Millions of won, spent on questionable community projects. Resources diverted to Okafor International with insufficient oversight. And throughout all of this, Mr. Kang's personal relationship with Miss Okafor creates obvious conflicts of interest. How can we trust his business judgment when he's romantically involved with his primary business partner? Park looked around the table, making eye contact with his supporters. I'm not questioning Mr. Kang's character. I'm questioning his judgment, and I'm suggesting that perhaps he's too compromised, too personally invested to lead this company effectively. A temporary suspension while we conduct proper audits is the responsible course of action. The board murmured agreement, his supporters vocal, others uncertain, everyone looking at Taemin expectantly. This was his moment, his chance to defend himself, to prove Park wrong, to save everything he and Nia had built. He stood, pulled up the presentation they'd prepared, and began methodically destroying Park's accusations with evidence, and documentation and transparent financial records that proved beyond doubt that every decision had been legitimate and beneficial to KDC. Director Park raises valid concerns about oversight and conflicts of interest, Taemin acknowledged, voice steady and professional. So let me address them directly with complete transparency. Here are the financial projections versus actual returns from the Okafor partnership. As you can see, we've exceeded projections in every category. Revenue is up 18%. Market expansion has opened opportunities we couldn't have accessed independently. Community goodwill has translated to government contracts and favourable zoning decisions worth tens of millions. He clicked through slides showing documentation, contracts, third-party audits they'd commissioned preemptively. Regarding conflicts of interest, yes, I'm in a relationship with Nia Okafor. I've never hidden that fact, but I've also never allowed personal feelings to compromise business judgment. Every decision goes through proper channels, receives board approval, follows company protocols. If anything, I've been more careful, more transparent, more rigorous with Okafor International than with any other partner specifically, because I'm aware of how it appears. Director Huang spoke up, studying the financial data with obvious approval. These numbers are impressive, Taemin. Significantly better than projections. It's hard to argue with results like this. Results obtained through questionable methods, Park countered, but his voice had lost some confidence. Community development projects that benefit immigrants and refugees at the expense of traditional Korean interests. Resources directed toward populations that don't contribute proportionally to our revenue streams. This isn't sound business strategy, it's charity disguised as investment. It's long-term strategic thinking, Taemin corrected. Seoul's demographics are changing. The immigrant population is growing, becoming economically significant, creating opportunities traditional developers are ignoring. We're not being charitable, Director Park. We're being smart. We're positioning KDC at the forefront of an emerging market that will define Seoul's economic landscape for the next 2 decades. He looked around the table, meeting each board member's eyes. But beyond business strategy, beyond financial returns, there's something else here. A question of what kind of company we want to be. My father built KDC on the principle that developers have responsibility to communities, not just to shareholders. That profit matters, but so does positive impact. The Okafor partnership embodies that principle. We're making money, yes, but we're also doing genuine good. We're helping people who need help. We're building communities, not just buildings. The room was silent. Even Park's supporters looked uncertain now, forced to consider whether opposing demonstrated success made strategic sense. Then the door opened unexpectedly. Nia walked in, despite having no official invitation, despite this being a closed board meeting, moving with that same commanding presence that made objecting seem futile. "Forgive the interruption," she said, voice carrying absolute authority, "but I believe this board is discussing me, my company, and my relationship with your CEO. I thought I should be present to address concerns directly." Park stood, sputtering. "This is highly inappropriate. Miss Okafor has no right to attend a private board meeting." "I have every right to defend my reputation when it's being questioned." Nia's voice cut through his objection like a blade. "Director Park has made serious allegations about financial impropriety and inappropriate influence. I'm here to address those allegations directly, transparently, exactly as Mr. Kang has been advocating we do." She pulled up her own presentation, mirroring Taemin's approach with even more comprehensive documentation. Okafor International has operated with complete transparency since entering partnership with KDC. Every transaction documented, every expense justified, every decision made through proper channels. Here are third-party audits, government certifications, international business credentials, everything needed to prove we're a legitimate operation engaged in legitimate business. Her eyes found Park, held his gaze with intensity that made the older man visibly uncomfortable. But I suspect Director Park's concerns aren't really about financial propriety, are they? They're about control, about resentment that Taemin inherited leadership instead of someone who'd served longer, worked harder, believed they'd earned it. About fear that changes Taemin is implementing threatened traditional power structures you've benefited from for decades. How dare you? Park started, but Nia continued over his objection. I dare because I've built businesses from nothing. I understand what it takes to succeed in competitive markets, and I recognize threatened mediocrity when I see it. The words landed like bombs, detonating Park's carefully constructed outrage. You have no idea what you're talking about. I've served this company for 20 years. And accomplished what, exactly? Maintained status quo? Protected your position? Because looking at your division's performance metrics, I see stagnation, not innovation. I see someone coasting on past success, resisting change, attacking anyone who threatens your comfortable position. Nia turned to address the full board. Director Park filed these accusations to remove Taemin and install leadership more sympathetic to traditional approaches, more willing to maintain systems that benefit long-time insiders. That's not concern for company welfare. That's self-interest disguised as fiduciary responsibility. The room erupted in argument, Park's supporters defending him, others questioning Nia's accusations, everyone talking over each other in chaos that felt like watching careful plans disintegrate in real time. Director Huang finally called for order, his voice cutting through the noise. Enough. This is productive for no one. He looked at Taemin, then at Nia, then at Park. I propose we table the suspension motion and instead commission an independent audit. Full transparency, complete documentation, external verification of all transactions related to the Okafor partnership. If the audit reveals impropriety, we revisit suspension. If it confirms what Mr. Kang and Miss Okafor have presented today, these allegations are dismissed and we move forward. Does that seem reasonable? It was a compromise that satisfied no one completely, which meant it was probably fair. Park wanted immediate suspension. Taemin wanted complete vindication. But Director Huang's proposal offered a path forward that respected both due diligence and presumption of good faith. The board voted 8-4 in favor of the independent audit, tabling the suspension motion. Park had lost, not definitively, but enough that his immediate threat was neutralized. When the meeting ended, when board members filed out, leaving just Taemin and Nia in the conference room, he turned to her with mixed exasperation and admiration. You weren't supposed to be here. We agreed I'd handle this the legitimate way through proper channels. And you did. You presented evidence, made your case, defended yourself properly. I just provided reinforcement and maybe called out the real motivations behind Park's attack. She smiled unrepentant. Sometimes transparency means exposing other people's hidden agendas, not just defending your own integrity. You basically accused a board member of self-interested conspiracy in front of his colleagues. I stated observable facts about performance metrics and defensive behavior patterns. Not my fault if that sounded like accusation. She moved closer, traced fingers along his jawline. Did it work? Did we win? We survived. The audit will take 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. If it comes back clean, Park's credibility is destroyed and we're secure. If it finds anything questionable, even minor procedural issues, he can use that to restart his attack with more ammunition. Then we make sure the audit finds nothing except proof of excellence and propriety. That's the plan. Thank you for backing me up, even if you weren't supposed to be there. I'll always back you up. That's what partners do. That's what people in love do. She kissed him, soft and sweet despite the corporate battlefield they'd just survived. They left the building together, stepped into Seoul's afternoon sunshine, and found themselves immediately surrounded. Not board members, not business associates. Armed men, at least 8 of them, appearing from vehicles with coordinated precision that screamed professional operation. Taemin's first thought was the Zhao family, but these men looked different. Korean, military bearing, moving with government efficiency rather than criminal organization tactics. The lead man, 40s, cold eyes, government ID visible, approached with absolute confidence. Kang Taemin and Nia Okafor, you're both under arrest for conspiracy, money laundering, and organized criminal activity. Please come quietly. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. The world tilted sideways. Taemin felt Nia tense beside him, saw her calculating odds, assessing threats, preparing to fight or flee with that tactical mind that never fully rested. He caught her hand, squeezed gently, a silent message. Don't. Not here. Not like this. On whose authority? Nia asked, voice steady despite obvious shock. The National Intelligence Service in cooperation with international law enforcement. We've been investigating your operations for 8 months. Today seemed an appropriate time to make arrests while you were conveniently together. The agent smiled, cold and satisfied. You've both been very clever, very careful, but not quite clever enough. They were separated, placed in different vehicles, driven in different directions. Taemin caught one last glimpse of Nia through tinted windows, saw fear and fury and desperate calculation in her eyes before distance swallowed her. Then he was alone with agents who refused to answer questions, refused to explain charges in detail, refused to do anything except transport him to an undisclosed location for interrogation. Everything they'd built, everything they'd fought for, 3 months of legitimate transformation and careful planning and hope for a different future, all of it was collapsing. And the worst part, the absolutely devastating part, was wondering if Director Park had somehow orchestrated this, if his financial allegations had been a distraction while building a much more serious criminal case with government cooperation, if they'd been so focused on defending against corporate accusations that they'd missed the real threat approaching from a completely different direction. The vehicle drove through Seoul's streets, taking him away from Nia, away from their life, toward an uncertain future that terrified him more than bullets, or burning mansions, or anything else they'd survived. Because this time, they weren't together. This time, they'd been separated by authorities with legal power and government resources and accusations that, if proven, could destroy them both permanently. This time, he didn't know if love and determination and desperate hope would be enough to save them. The interrogation room was exactly what Taemin expected from television dramas. Concrete walls, metal table, uncomfortable chair, one-way mirror reflecting his own exhausted face back at him. He'd been here for 6 hours, maybe 7, time losing meaning under fluorescent lights that never dimmed. They'd taken his phone, his watch, his belt, everything that could track time or communicate with the outside world. No lawyer yet, despite multiple requests. No charges formally read. Just endless questions from rotating agents who seemed determined to break him through sheer persistence. "Let's go over this again," said the current interrogator, woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and sharper questions. "You claim all transactions with Okafor International were legitimate business dealings. Yet, our investigation shows Ms. Okafor has connections to organized crime networks throughout West Africa and East Asia. Money laundering operations, human trafficking routes, weapons distribution channels. You expect us to believe you knew nothing about any of this? I know Nia ran a protection network for immigrant communities. I know she operated in grey areas between legal and illegal. But everything we did together, every transaction through KDC Development, was completely legitimate and documented." Taemin's voice was hoarse from hours of repetition, throat raw from stress and dehydration. "We have testimony suggesting otherwise. Associates of Ms. Okafor claiming she used your company to launder criminal proceeds, that the community development projects were fronts for illegal operations, that your romantic relationship was specifically cultivated to gain access to legitimate business infrastructure she could exploit. That's not true, None of that is true. Then explain the $2 million transferred from Okafor International to a shell company in the Cayman Islands 3 weeks ago. Explain the shipping containers that arrived at Busan port with documentation listing your company as the recipient. Containers that contained undeclared goods. Explain the meetings between Ms. Okafor and known criminal elements during your partnership period. Every question was a trap. Every answer potentially incriminating. Taemin knew enough from his corporate legal experience to understand they were building a case, connecting dots real and imagined, constructing a narrative of conspiracy whether or not evidence actually supported it. I want a lawyer. I've requested legal representation multiple times. Under Korean law, you're required to provide access to counsel. You'll have a lawyer when we decide you've been sufficiently cooperative. Until then, we keep talking. The interrogator leaned forward, voice dropping to something almost sympathetic. Mr. Kang, we understand you're a victim here. Ms. Okafor is a sophisticated operator who targeted you specifically, used your attraction to her as leverage, manipulated you into providing the legitimacy she needed. You're not the criminal. You're the dupe who fell for a beautiful woman's manipulation. Help us build the case against her, and we can probably arrange immunity for you. You walk away, rebuild your life, avoid prison time entirely. The offer was tempting, terrifyingly tempting. Blame everything on Nia, claim he'd been manipulated, save himself at her expense. They were handing him an escape route that required only betrayal. No. The word came out firmer than he felt. No, I won't testify against Nia. I won't claim I was manipulated or deceived. Everything we did together as partners. If you have evidence of crimes, present it. If you don't, charge me or release me. But I'm done answering questions without legal representation. The interrogator's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Loyalty to her will destroy you. Maybe. But betraying her would destroy who I am. I'll take my chances with loyalty. She stood abruptly, left the room without another word. Taemin was alone for what felt like hours, exhaustion pulling at him, fear gnawing at his composure. He wondered where Nia was, if she was undergoing similar interrogation, if she was safe, if she was holding up better than him. Then the door opened, and Director Hwang walked in, looking grim and determined and completely unexpected. Director Hwang, how did you... I've been trying to get access for 8 hours. Finally convinced them I have information relevant to their investigation, which is technically true. He sat across from Taemin, lowered his voice. Listen carefully. The NIS has been building this case for months, but their evidence is circumstantial at best. They're hoping for confessions, for one of you to implicate the other, because their actual proof of criminal activity is thin. They have suspicions, connections, associations, but nothing definitive. Where's Nia? Different facility. They separated you deliberately, standard interrogation technique. Make you think she's cooperating, make her think you're talking, pressure both of you into betraying each other to save yourselves. Hwang pulled out papers from his briefcase, careful to keep them below table level away from camera sight. I brought someone who can help. She's waiting outside, but the NIS won't let her in until they've exhausted their interrogation tactics. You need to hold out just a bit longer. Who? The best criminal defense attorney in Seoul. She's already filed motions, threatened lawsuits, made enough noise that the NIS will have to produce you for formal charging or release you within the next few hours. But Taemin, I need to know something. Is there anything at all that Nia did during your partnership that was actually illegal? Because if there is, we need to know now before it becomes evidence we can't counter. Taemin thought about the weapons shipment they'd intercepted from the Zhao family, thought about the violence at the factory in Busan, thought about all the grey areas Nia had operated in before their partnership formalized. Everything we did together through KDC was legitimate. I swear that on my father's memory. What Nia did before we partnered, what she did separately, I wasn't involved in, and have no direct knowledge of. That's the truth. Then that's what we tell the attorney. That's our position. You partnered with a woman whose past was complicated, but your professional dealings were completely above board. Huang stood, prepared to leave. Hold strong. Don't let them break you. And don't for a second believe that Nia is cooperating against you. I know her better than the NIS thinks I do. She's fighting just as hard to protect you. After Huang left, Taemin was alone again, but this time with hope. The attorney arrived an hour later, walked into the interrogation room like she owned it, immediately demanded formal charges or immediate release. The NIS tried to stall, but she had law and legal precedent on her side, threatened enough consequences that they finally relented. 22 hours after his arrest, Taemin walked out of NIS custody without charges, released on his own recognizance pending further investigation. The morning sun was blinding after so long under fluorescent interrogation lighting. And there, standing beside a black Mercedes with her own attorney, looking exhausted and furious and beautiful, was Nia. They moved toward each other without conscious thought, met in the middle of the government facility parking lot, held each other with desperate intensity. "Did you tell them anything?" she whispered against his neck. "Nothing that mattered. You? Nothing. I would never betray you. I know. I know." He pulled back just enough to see her face, saw tears tracking through exhaustion and stress. "They tried to get me to blame you, offered immunity if I testified against you. I refused. They offered me the same deal, said you were already cooperating, that I should save myself." She laughed bitterly. "As if I would believe for a second that you'd betray me. As if they didn't understand that we're either both guilty or both innocent, but definitely together." Their attorneys interrupted the reunion with urgent warnings about surveillance, about being careful what they said in public, about the investigation continuing even without formal charges. They were driven separately to a secure location. A hotel suite the attorneys had arranged, somewhere they could talk freely without fear of monitoring. When they were finally alone, truly alone for the first time in 22 hours, they collapsed together on the couch, holding each other, processing survival. "They had evidence," Nia said quietly. "Not about us, about me. Things from before our partnership. Operations I ran, people I protected, methods I used. Nothing they could definitively prove, but enough connections to build circumstantial cases. Someone's been feeding them information, someone with detailed knowledge of my previous operations." "Park," Taemin suggested, but Nia shook her head. "Park's a corporate threat, not an intelligence asset. This is deeper, more coordinated. Someone who's been watching me for months, documenting everything, waiting for the right moment to strike." She stood, started pacing with that agitated energy he recognized from moments when tactical problems had no clear solutions. "The Zhao family? It has to be. After we humiliated them, after we forced them out of Seoul, they must have gone to the NIS with information, offered cooperation in exchange for help, taking us down legally. Can they prove anything? Did you leave evidence from before our partnership?" "I was careful, very careful, but careful isn't the same as invisible. If they dig deep enough, trace connections far enough back, they might find things I can't explain away." She stopped pacing, turned to face him directly. "Taemin, if this gets worse, if they find actual evidence and bring formal charges, you need to distance yourself from me. Take the immunity deal, testify that I manipulated you, save yourself and KDC. I can survive prison. I've survived worse, but I can't survive knowing I destroyed you." "Absolutely not. We established this during interrogation, established it before that. We're partners, in everything, facing everything together. I'm not walking away, not testifying against you, not saving myself at your expense. Even if it means losing everything. Your company, your reputation, possibly your freedom. Even then. Especially then." He moved to her, took her hands, forced her to really hear him. I love you. That's not conditional on safety or success or convenient circumstances. That's permanent, Nia. Whatever happens, we face it together, or we don't face it at all. She kissed him desperately, clinging to him like he was the only solid thing in a dissolving world. We need a plan. We can't just wait for them to build their case. We need to be proactive, strategic. Agreed. What do you suggest? We find whoever's feeding them information and we shut that source down. We prove the Zhao family connection, demonstrate that this entire investigation is based on revenge rather than legitimate evidence. We go on offense instead of defense. The next week was a blur of investigation and counter-investigation. Nia's remaining team, the women who'd stayed loyal through legitimization and now through legal persecution, worked around the clock tracing information flows, identifying NIS sources, building a counter-narrative. They found it buried in digital communications and financial transfers. Zhao Minjun hadn't left Seoul after their confrontation at the factory. He'd gone underground, connected with his family's intelligence contacts in China, and systematically fed information to the NIS as revenge. Everything they knew about Nia's past operations came from Zhao family intelligence, coloured by their own criminal perspective, designed to make legitimate protection work look like organised crime. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling, enough to create reasonable doubt about the NIS Investigations Foundation, enough to suggest political motivation rather than criminal justice. Nia's attorney delivered their findings directly to the prosecutor's office with an ultimatum: drop the investigation or face public exposure of how a foreign criminal organization manipulated Korean intelligence services for personal revenge. 3 weeks after the arrests, the NIS quietly announced they were closing their investigation into Kang Taemin and Nia Okafor. Insufficient evidence to proceed. No formal charges would be filed. The public statement was bureaucratic and brief, but the message was clear. They'd lost. Director Park tried one final corporate maneuver after the NIS announcement, called for another emergency board meeting to revisit the suspension motion. But this time, the board had no patience for his attacks. The independent audit had come back, showing not just propriety, but excellence in all KDC Okafor international dealings. Park's credibility was destroyed, his supporters had abandoned him, and the vote to remove him from the board passed unanimously. Taemin watched the man who'd tried to destroy him pack his office, felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion. This was what victory looked like in the legitimate world. Not death or surrender, but corporate politics and votes and bureaucratic processes that felt simultaneously more civilized and more cruel than the violence he'd experienced in Nia's previous world. 6 months after that first traffic encounter that changed everything, Taemin stood in the newly opened Okafor International Community Center in Itaewon. The space was magnificent. Everything they'd envisioned: language classes for immigrants, legal aid services, business development programs, art galleries showcasing African culture, childcare facilities, medical clinics. Everything needed to serve communities that Seoul's traditional systems ignored. Nia moved through the opening ceremony like royalty, greeting families who'd benefited from her protection networks, now operating completely legitimately through proper channels. Children ran past laughing, elderly refugees found community, young entrepreneurs pitched business ideas. This was the empire they'd built together. Not bullets and violence and shadow operations, but legitimate structures that actually helped people, that created opportunity, that proved you could be powerful without being destructive. "Proud of what we've accomplished?" Taemin asked, finding Nia during a quiet moment away from the celebration. "Terrified of how close we came to losing it all," she admitted. The arrests, the investigation, Park's attacks, any of it could have destroyed everything. We survived through luck as much as strategy. We survived through being smarter than people who underestimated us, through refusing to betray each other when given every incentive to do so. through believing we could build something legitimate even when everyone told us it was impossible. He pulled her close, held her while celebration continued around them. I love you. I loved you when you were a crime boss with a motorcycle and a dangerous reputation. I love you now as a legitimate businesswoman building community centers and helping refugees. I'll love you through whatever comes next, whatever challenges we face, whatever impossible situations we somehow navigate together. You're still terrible at romantic declarations, getting better but still terrible. She was smiling though, eyes bright with tears and joy and hope mixed together. Good thing I love you anyway. They kissed there in the community centre they'd built together, surrounded by people they'd helped, standing in the physical manifestation of transformation from violence to legitimacy, from shadow operations to community development, from two lonely people finding each other to partners building an empire that actually mattered. The journey from that first traffic encounter to this moment had been impossible, dangerous, nearly fatal multiple times. But they'd survived every threat, navigated every challenge, refused every temptation to betray each other or abandon what they were building. 2 years later, Taemin proposed on the same balcony where they'd first admitted loving each other. Nia said yes through tears and laughter, and they planned a wedding that would blend Korean traditions with West African customs, creating something new that honored both their histories. Director Hwang walked Nia down the aisle since her own father couldn't travel from Lagos. Her team, the women who'd protected her through violence and legitimization, served as bridesmaids wearing elegant dresses that couldn't quite hide their vigilant scanning of the venue for threats. Old habits died hard. The ceremony was intimate despite their public profiles. Only people they truly trusted, which wasn't many, but the ones who came mattered. They exchanged vows in Korean and Yoruba, promising partnership and protection and love that transcended danger. When they kissed as married couple, when applause erupted from their small gathering, Taemin thought about that traffic light 2 years ago. Thought about the woman on a motorcycle who'd mocked his expensive car and rejected his advances. Thought about how one moment of chemistry and challenge and refusing to accept no had transformed absolutely everything. Any regrets? Nia whispered during their first dance, her body fitting perfectly against his, like they'd been designed for each other. Not even one. Not a single moment. You? Just that I didn't meet you sooner. That we wasted years being lonely when we could have been lonely together. She laughed at her own joke, that beautiful sound that still made his heart race. But I'll take what we have. However it started, wherever it goes, I'll take every moment with you. Even the bullets and arrests and corporate warfare? Especially those. They're what proved we're real, that this isn't just chemistry or convenience. We survived hell together, Taemin. Everything else is easy. They built their life together in the years that followed, expanded the community centers to 3 more locations across Seoul, opened partnerships in Busan and Incheon, created legitimate business empire that rivaled anything from Nia's criminal past, but with the satisfaction of actually helping people rather than just surviving. Sometimes late at night, Nia would get restless, the operator underneath the businesswoman emerging, scanning for threats that no longer existed, preparing for violence that never came. Taemin learned to recognize those moments, learned to hold her through the transition, remind her that they were safe, they'd won. They'd built something that couldn't be destroyed by enemies because it was built on legitimacy and community rather than fear. And sometimes he'd catch himself watching her command boardrooms or negotiate with government officials, seeing flashes of the dangerous woman who'd saved his life in a burning mansion, who'd stood over defeated enemies, who'd loved him fiercely enough to risk everything. She was still dangerous, would always be dangerous, but now she channeled that danger into protecting their empire, their community, their life together. And that made all the difference. 10 years after that first traffic encounter, they stood on the balcony of their penthouse watching Seoul's sunset paint the city gold and pink. 2 people who shouldn't have worked, whose love story started with danger and near death and impossible odds. Worth it? Taemin asked, arms wrapped around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. Every bullet, every threat, every impossible moment. Absolutely worth it. I'd do it all again. Exactly the same, if it meant ending up here with you. She turned in his arms, kissed him soft and deep. You saved me, Taemin. Not from enemies or danger or anything dramatic. You saved me from being alone, from thinking power and protection were all I deserved, from forgetting I could want more than survival. You saved me from sleepwalking through a perfect life I never actually wanted, from thinking safety and boredom were the same as happiness. You woke me up, Nia, made me feel alive for the first time. They stood there as Seoul's lights flickered on below, two people who'd found each other in chaos and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Their story had started with a motorcycle and a traffic light and chemistry that could have destroyed them both. Instead, it became the foundation for an empire built on love and legitimacy, and the revolutionary idea that you could be powerful without being destructive, that you could protect without violence, that you could build something that lasted. And on that balcony, watching the city they'd claimed together, they knew with absolute certainty that whatever came next, whatever challenges or threats or impossible situations awaited, they'd face it the same way they'd faced everything else, together, always together. Because that's what you did when you found your person, your partner, your impossible love in the middle of traffic on a random Seoul night. You held on, you fought for it, you built something beautiful from the chaos, and you never ever let go.